Hey, mijos and mijas, welcome back to another podcast episode. Today, we're going to be discussing one of the biggest topics, if not the biggest topic, that a lot of first generation or children of immigrants deal with, and that is college. Dun, 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 dun. You heard me. I know for a fact if you are a child of an immigrant, you have heard of this topic so much and you're probably sick and tired of it. I too can relate to you, and we're going to break that all down today. So, honestly, first and foremost, for those of you folks that don't know, first generation college student is someone who is that first generation of individuals to go into college. So, an example of that could be, let's say your parents were born in Mexico and they immigrated here to the US. You are their child, you were born here in the US, you're that first generation to go to college. But it could also be like, even if your parents were born here in the US, they had you, their child, are going to college, you're that first generation to go to college. So it's honestly that generation that is going into college without having someone above them, let's say your parents or like uncles or something like that having gone to college. You're a first generation. That's briefly what I remember from the explanation that the College and Career Center gave us when we were applying to college. Because let's be honest, if you're a child of an immigrant, you don't know how the hell you applied to college, but you got it done and you made it. So definitely wanted to break that down because I think it's important, because we're going to, of course, be using first generation a lot, not only in this podcast, but on this episode. So I really feel like college is something that a lot of immigrant parents dream of. And I think it comes from a little bit of them living vicariously through us. I know for a fact my parents have always told me and my siblings that they want us to go to college because they themselves always dreamt of going to college, and it's an experience that they never were able to have. And, you know, of course, with that comes some like repercussions, and, you know, they definitely want us to take advantage of the full experience, especially as, you know, United States citizens. They feel like if you have the tools and like the clear roadmap to get there, you should take advantage of that. And you should, like, you know, without a doubt, like, why are you even thinking about it? Go to college. You can, right? So I think for, you know, children of immigrants and like first generation folks, there's a lot of pressure that our parents or our family like adds to us to try and, you know, go to college and to get a career, because the way that they think of it is you have a career, you get a good job, not a career, sorry, you get a degree that leads you to a career with getting a good job. And then, of course, good job means good pay. Good pay means you're set and you can, you know, raise a family or like do whatever it is that you want to do successfully in their eyes. So I do feel like that is a lot of pressure, especially because typically you're applying this pressure on young kids, you know, a senior or junior in college. And I really feel like a lot of it is, you know, them wanting for you to break that cycle. I feel like that's the biggest thing that comes up, where it's like, you know, don't live the life that we lived, and, you know, give your children a better life, and give your children more than what we were able to give you. And I feel like these are all phrases that many of us have heard growing up, especially like when you're applying to college and trying to figure out that post high school graduation life. I think a lot of it is like our parents wanting us to break cycles and our parents wanting us to be something bigger and better than they were able to be. And of course, it's not in a bad way. You know, our parents have done the best that they could with the resources that they were given. But unfortunately, a lot of barriers are placed in their lives, especially if they are, you know, coming to this country. And years ago, things weren't the way that they are now, where now, you know, we have a lot of programs that could support, you know, immigrants and stuff of that nature. Back then, I remember when my parents came over, like my mom told me vividly, I remember her saying how she came to high school. She got here when she was in high school, you know, had a great high school career, good grades, A student. And then, you know, when it was time to apply for college, she applied, she got scholarships, but she couldn't go because she wasn't, you know, a US citizen. So stories like that are very heartbreaking to hear. And I think those are the stories that fuel a lot of our parents to encourage us to go out and get a degree. Just like I said, for them, it's the way that it works. It's like you're born here, you like automatically, like it's easy for you to do that, right? So, just a couple of things that I do also want to talk about are just kind of like breaking down how not only you're going through this experience for the first time, but you're also navigating like home life. And I think that's very, very difficult because being a first generation college student and a child of immigrants, like there's a lot that you have on your plate, a lot of first time experiences that really, really, really interfere with, college and that really impact that. Just a fun statistic that I was able to pull online before our podcast episode was the fact that there are 8.2 million first generation undergraduate students. That makes up 54% of the undergrads in the US. And that comes from First Gen Forward, an organization. So that really just goes to show how we're not alone and how we are a big community. And as much as we try to think that, we might be singled out or we might be one of the very few on our campus, we're not alone, And I think it's very important for us to know that and very important for us to remind ourselves that if it doesn't feel like we're a huge community, clearly we are, because 8.2 million of us, first generation students, are going to college, and we're making up half of the undergraduates in the United States. And I think that's just like amazing in itself. I do want to talk about, though, before we get into the whole college talk and that experience, is how do you even eventually get to college? I know for me, like growing up in a historically excluded community, filled with diversity and minorities, like for us, it's very difficult because that's really a culture that we're not used to. And I honestly, for a fact, can say that if it isn't for the College and Career Center on my high school campus, I 100% probably would have never got into college because I would have not known where to start. I knew that I wanted to go to college. I just didn't know where to start or how to even get there, how to start the process. And let's be honest, like a lot of these like official legal paperwork that you have to submit, like we're not strangers to it because I'm pretty sure many people can relate to, growing up as a kid, trying to translate forms for our parents. But like it's a process that we probably would have struggled with, and many of us would have left and dropped, if we had to do it on our own. And I'm so grateful for programs and resources like the College and Career Center because they really are, pivotal to helping support students get to where they want to get. And I know not all communities have these programs. I'm sure more affluent communities, have support in other ways, but a lot of our low-income communities, our diverse communities, do have these programs. And I remember, being in high school and, our College and Career Center tries to make it fun. They'll theme it and then they'll create like their own internal deadlines to help like all students get to, a percentage or like, whatever incentives they may offer, pizza party or gift cards, yada, yada. And I vividly remember like our College and Career Center coming in like to our electives and giving the spiel on college and then kind of saying like, hey, like soon we're going to come in and we're going to start doing applications with you. And we have office hours and like, bam, 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 support, resources, which is great. But I also remember going through a difficult time in high school, my senior year. Like, it was very difficult because I went through some like ASB trauma, which now is like totally irrelevant. But at the time, it was really consuming me. And I really had no energy or like motivation to like focus on college, which sounds absurd because like now, of course, like ASB is like, just a past experience. And college is like, of course, has more, ways more than that. But I feel like at the time I was just so consumed that I really didn't see outside of that. And one of our College and Career Center counselors pulled me in and was like, hey, like you haven't hit the internal deadlines that we have. Like what's going on? Like, how can we best support you? How can we offer more support? And I was just like, I don't think I want to go to college. Like I wanted to go to college because I knew like a college education is something I always wanted. And I've always been very eager to like, develop myself in different ways. But I just didn't have like, honestly, energy. Like, I was just so like drained that I had no energy to focus on like classwork or anything like that. And, administration was supporting me and was, working with teachers to like help me with deadlines and stuff like that. But college, at least when I applied, like, there was a lot of stuff that like SAT was something that was needed when I applied. I was so mad because the year after me is when they removed that requirement. And I was like, really? Like, but like SAT and, depending on where you're applying, you need your like personal insight questions. I don't even remember what they're called, but like those essays that you had to write. And I really was just like not doing it. And I was like, I don't think I want to go. And the counselor was like, you're going to go because I know you want to go. And we've talked about this before. And I know that you're just having a difficult time right now. And I know that this is something that you want to do. And that's something that if we let you not like, submit these applications, you're gonna regret it. And I know that because I know you. And honestly, like, I was like, oh, like, thank you, yada, yada. And I really just was like in one ear, out the other. And it wasn't until I was literally pulled out of class and I was like given like a one-on-one session that like I actually filled out my applications. Like we broke it out into chunks and it was like, at one point it was so bad that I was just like sitting there and she was like asking me the questions, right? And she was like, what's an experience in your life that like, really, really like impacted or altered you? And I was just like, oh, we're getting into the tea. So I was just talking and like, she was typing it up, and she was like, all right, we're going to work on this. So if it really wasn't for that support, that looks different for me, of course, because I was going through something, at that time. But genuinely, like I feel like these centers really set up students for success and really help us beat those odds, because as a first generation student, you have no idea what you're supposed to do. There's no roadmap. There's no like nothing. You have no tools. You're like blindsided, right? And some of us are fortunate to have like siblings that, are older than us and are in college or have gone to college that can kind of support. But even then, like things just changed so drastically over the years that like if you had a sibling that went to college like 5 years ago, the things might have changed, or, siblings might be going through their own things and they like can support you, but can't support you as much as the College and Career Center can. So that's my spiel on the kudos to the College and Career Center that really helped me apply to college. But yeah, I think it's just a confusing process. Like you have an application, that's one deadline. And then, you learn that there's a Cal State that you can go to, at least in California. There's a UC, there's community college that you can go to. There's privates, there's for-profits. Like there's so many colleges that you can apply to. And, each of them has their own application process. If you're applying to a Cal State, you apply to one application, right? Just to the CSU system, the Cal State University system. And depending on where you want to go, you select how many schools you want that application sent to. If you want it sent to Fullerton, to Mingus, or, Northridge, like that's the convenience of having one application for all those Cal State schools. Same thing for the UC system. So like those are things that they're there to guide you with. And another whole component of this, especially for first generation students, and I'm pretty sure for a lot of children of immigrants, is financial aid. Like you can get financial aid from the government, something that a lot of people don't know and something that a lot of people learn. And that's a whole different application that you have to fill, because that application follows you every year as you're doing college, right? And you have to renew that. And that's something that you have to learn, has a whole new deadline. So it's like, that is so confusing for someone to like pick up without having like that guidance. I remember when I started college, like I was so scared, and I graduated in 2020 from high school. So for me, college freshman year was fully online. So not only is it confusing because you're going from one version of curriculum and version of like structure to a whole different like version, and it's online. And I remember a lot of the times, like you see people like in your classes, you see classmates who are like, who are not first gen and who have had parents and, other generations that have gone to college. And, you might even have a class with someone whose a building's named after their family, right? And you see their experience and it's so different from yours. And it really, really, really hits that imposter syndrome of like, asking yourself like, holy shit, do I even belong here? Like, and I think that's such a unique experience that not everyone can relate to. And it's like, not only are you going to college and you're trying to like figure out like your young adulthood life, like, and you're trying to figure out, you know, classes and campus culture, like that's just the stereotypical like regular stuff that you deal with when you go to college. But on top of that, you're adding on like this first generation experience, and you're adding on, you know, the responsibilities from home. Because a lot of us, children of immigrants, like we have things that we add to our plate at home. Some of us are in charge of coordinating, making sure that the bills are getting paid. Some of us are in charge of our little siblings and taking them to school and, you know, making sure that we do homework with them. So it's like there's much more on our plate that a lot of the times, like focusing on ourselves and putting ourselves first is not the first option. It's the second option, right? So I think those are different things that like diversify our experience. And really like going into college, because you're kind of doing it alone and you don't have that, you know, help. You don't have someone to like guide you and walk you step by step. Like a lot of the times there's opportunities and resources that you don't even know exist, like the Career Center or the Writing Center. Like I know Cal State Fullerton had a writing center where like you could make an appointment, you could show up, and they would give you feedback like on the papers that you're writing and like whatever you're going to submit. So I think that's like definitely, if you're listening to this right now, like use the resources that are being provided on campus and go to your campus's website and look at every single resource that's provided. Because if you're at that college, you're paying for it, you know, even if you have financial aid, like your education's being paid for, and all of those resources are included in your education. The health center is included in your education. All those like miscellaneous campus fees, the ASI fee, like all of those fees for like student government, like that is part of your education, and you should definitely take advantage of it. You know, I know the health center on campus would do like STD testing and, you know, like basic like cold and cough. Like those are things that a lot of people could take advantage of, especially because, you know, unfortunately nowadays, like Medicare is a privilege. You know, a lot of people have, you know, not a lot of people have private insurance. And I think that's something that campuses are starting to add on to be, you know, a support system for their students. I know that tutoring is also available. I was not the sharpest tool in the shed when it came to math. I actually took it, I want to say 3 or 4 times. I don't quite remember. But I want to say 3. No, I want to say 4. That's like so embarrassing to admit, but like math was not my strong suit. And I remember going to the tutoring center for math and like booking my tutoring sessions every week and like sitting there with my tutor and like trying to figure it out. So like those are a lot of resources that are definitely crucial and like beneficial to first gen and children of immigrants. It's just the fact that like you can use that on campus and it's not going to cost you money, you know, because I'm sure there's peers on campus that their parents hire a private tutor for them, or their parents hire like whatever service for them. Unfortunately, like many of us don't have that privilege. So that's definitely something that you want to take advantage of. I think there's also like a cultural gap with college, 110%. Like, you know, we're going through this experience for the first time, but it's also our parents kind of going through that for the first time and having to explain things to your parents. Like, I know one of the biggest things is like your parents probably think it's like very easy to be like, oh, like, just tell the professor to like, la, la, la. And then you're like, Mom, I can't just tell the professor, like, you know, that I'm going to skip a midterm because I need to take my sister to school. Like, you know, there's little things like that that you kind of had to explain to your family and be like, hey, it doesn't really work that way. Or, you know, or sometimes it's the opposite where your parents are like, oh, like, did you tell your teacher that you're going to like be sick and you're not going to school today? And it's like, Mom, my professor really doesn't care if I'm going to be there or not. Like, that's my responsibility to show up, not his. So really having to kind of like teach your parents that is such an experience because they're living it through you. And I think it's beautiful. 110% sure it's beautiful, especially when you bring your parents on campus. I feel like, you know, just seeing their faces and kind of like seeing them like take it all in and just seeing that pride in them, like it's definitely beautiful. And like I mentioned earlier, it's really them living vicariously through us. And I know a lot of us can relate to that. Um, I have another like fun little statistic here. First generation students are 2 times more likely to leave college within the first 3 years compared to continuing gen students. And that's a statistic from the National Center for Education Statistics. And the reason why including statistics in here is because like not only do I want to share my experience, but I also want to connect my experience to, data. Like it's real. Like, of course, this data comes from people just like me, but like that's big, right? I just mentioned how sometimes a lot of these continuing gen students have private tutors and have all these like resources that they get because their parents have gone through college and their parents have the means and the funds to like, fund that type of lifestyle, which is fine. Like by all means, I'm not hating on anyone who has those resources, but just to put it into perspective, like first gen students are 2 times more likely to drop out of college within the first 3 years. That's crazy because standard, it's 4 years that you're doing your undergrad. And I'm sarcastic with that. And I'm like, quoting that because I feel like that's a whole nother different rabbit hole. A lot of times you go to the College and Career Center on campus and they'll tell you like, oh yeah, 16 units so that you could graduate in 4 years. And I'm sitting there like, mama, I have a full-time job. Like I commute to school. Like I could take 4 or 5 classes depending on how rigorous these classes are. But 16 units, like to graduate in 4 years, like, you know what? I'm going to be fine if I graduate in 5 because life happens, And I think a lot of the times, like when they create those, standards where it's like, oh, it's standard for you to have 4 years, right? A lot of times they're not created with, our population in mind. Or maybe they just create it because they're like, well, you know what? If we can get these kids out in 4 years, we can let more people in sooner. We can get more money. Like, unfortunately, that might be a deciding factor as well. But I really feel like, it's just powerful to see how we make up 54% of the undergraduate, like, students in college, but we're also 2 times more likely to drop out within the first 3 years. That is just like mind boggling. And it's true because I remember like making friends, in college and, reaching out and saying like, hey, what's your schedule this semester? And then being like, oh, like I can't, like, unfortunately, like my parents lost their job and I had to pick up more hours at work. So I had to drop out of school. And I'm like, you have 1 more year, like make it happen, And of course it's easier said than done. And, by all means, like, I don't want to downplay anyone's story because everyone lives life at their own pace and that's totally fine. But I also even think like, I would make a lot of friends with like the older people at school. Part of it was because since I had a full-time job through most of my college career, I would go to a lot of night classes. So like most of my semesters were filled with night classes, which had master students or just, like older folks that were going back to school. And I remember telling one of my classmates, she was a little discouraged because she's like, dude, like I'm a mom of 2 teenagers. Like my sons are going to start college in like 2 years. And I'm like, and that's fine. Like you're doing this for you, for your family. I'm like, your kids are going to be so proud to know that you came back to give them a better life. I'm like, but not only that, like you're going to be that role model because if you're able to finish college, God, they're going to be like, if my mom could do it, I can kick ass too. And I can also graduate college and I want to go to college. Right. So I think like those experiences are so unique to us first generation, like folks. And, I think it's like I mentioned, it's a different experience when you're a first generation college student and a child of immigrants because like that intersectionality just like grows. I do want to give some more advice to maybe people who are in college and are first gen children of immigrants like listening. Definitely find community on campus. I think that's really important. There's so much community that you could find. And what I mean by that is like, of course, find your people, right? If you want to tap into that cultural community, there's a lot of clubs on campus. I'm 100% sure that there's groups, there's, societies, there's so much. Like, I know my campus had a Latino fraternity on campus, and we had like a Mecha club on campus. So, we had a Latino center on campus, which was ran by the school. So definitely get involved with those organizations, because when you find community, like, you feel more at home. And through that community, you get to find a lot of like friendships, you get to find a lot of resources, networking. And college is the best time to network, because 110%, like, what other room are you going to walk into with that much diversity and like that much like resources? Not only do you have the campus given resources, but you have like people who, maybe their dad works at a company that you can get an internship at, right? So don't start with that in mind. Like, don't go looking out for people saying like, oh, I bet their parents can get me an internship. Like, no, be genuine, be yourself, find your community, have it be authentic, have it be natural, because you never know who you're going to meet. And, down the line, you might be talking to a friend that you made 2 years ago, and you're like, yeah, dude, I need to get an internship. And they can be like, wait, I have a buddy who has an internship, like, at X and YZ place. Maybe they can hook you up. Or my mom's office is looking for, like, there's so much networking that can happen on campus, and definitely take advantage of it. I know it's frightening because we might feel that imposter syndrome of not belonging on campus and not feeling like we fit and like we deserve to be there. But talk to people. I know now we have such a digital world that we're always on our phones, but I can assure you 110% the other people are feeling the exact same thing that you are feeling. If you're at the library or if you're at the Starbucks, waiting on your order, whatever it may be, like, strike up a conversation. And I know it sucks because we're such a digital what? We're such a digital world that like we overthink things and we get scared of like rejection, but like, just compliment someone and be like, hey, I love that flannel, or like, hey, your hair looks so nice today, your makeup looks beautiful, right? And 110% the other person will talk to you, because the other person is probably just as frightened as you are. And that's not only for like, of course, like, if you find your people, like, you can connect even more, but even just like regular college students, like, we're all just, products of this digital world, and we're scared to have face-to-face conversations. But I know I definitely made friends like that. Like, and there's a lot of friends that I kind of made, like, not even intentionally. Like, I remember one time, someone had like spilled their drink, and I was like, oh shoot. So like, I just like quickly helped them, like, clean it up. And then we started chatting, and then it was like, oh, like, this person was sitting next to me, and if it wasn't for that spilled drink, and if it wasn't for me helping them, like, we would have never had that nice conversation. So definitely, like, try to find cultural clubs or try to find niche clubs. If you're into, anime, 110% sure there's anime clubs on campus. Video games, there's a bunch of groups that meet up and play video games. Fashion, like, whatever your niche is, find that community, because when you build community, you feel more at home, and there's more of a reason for you to belong and to really, really feel great when you go on campus. I think that's also important. Like, if you're applying to college, like, go to the college that's not only going to give you a great education, but that's also going to make you feel at home. And I mean that by the environment, the culture on campus. Like, also look into that. Don't just look into, like, like the education. Of course, you want to go to like a top school, but I feel like that's a good factor, because you're going to spend the next 4 to 5, 6, whatever, how many years you get it done. You're going to spend all those years on campus. You want to make sure you feel at home. I think one of my favorite things of college was definitely like the mentors and the professors on campus that really just like get it. I remember going to, like a advising appointment, and the lady that helped me was like, it was so comforting, because I was a freshman and I was nervous, and I like didn't know how to apply for classes, like enroll in classes. And I went, and she like reviewed my schedule, and she was like, oh, like, I remember like her last name, being like Hispanic. And I was just like, okay, like, I'm going to pick her because like it sounds like she's going to be Hispanic. And I remember showing up and like just seeing it and like really just connecting and being like, I found my people. Like, she's going to get it. And then as we were talking, like, she could tell I was nervous. She was kind of like talking it up a little bit and like getting to know me. And she was like, oh, like, I'm first gen too. Like, yeah, like, I went to school, like, my parents, like, she's like, I grew up with like immigrant parents. And then like being able to just like share that was just like, I'm like, you get it. So I kept booking with her. Like, anytime I needed something from an advisor, I would book it with her. And, she kind of like got to know me. And that advisor was honestly the advisor that helped me change my majors. Because when I went into college, I thought I wanted to do business administration. But once I started taking those classes, you guys, I quickly realized that it wasn't for me. I was like, I think I want something that's more people-centered, more community-centered, especially because that's what I was doing at work at that time. I mean, I still do it now, but like that's what had just gotten into working. And I really fell in love with like the public sector. And she's the one that helped me make that change, because I was like, well, I'm stuck here. And she's like, why? She's like, you could change your major. Like, why would you want to do something you don't like for the rest of your life? And I was like, I don't know how. I didn't know that was an option. So definitely like find those people. A lot of times you get to take electives, like pick cool electives that are out of your comfort zone. I remember I took a, pop culture class, and I had the best professor. She was just like such a knowledgeable person. She was young. She was African American. So she taught us a lot about, pop culture with African American folks in the United States. Like, I took a Chicano studies class, which was amazing. I, found out the professor was like, she lived 2 cities over from me. So she would like throw out little things, and she's like, oh, well, like if you live in like the LA area, like I was here, like la la la. And I'd be like, oh my God, like that's like right next door to me. So like really taking advantage of, those opportunities to have classes like that, like helps you like really feel connected to your campus and to your education. But yeah, celebrate all your little wins, treat yourself, celebrate it, whether that's with a little coffee, matcha. Like I used to do that if I like passed a class, like I would like, go to lunch somewhere with some friends or by myself. If I was, freaking out over like a midterm and then I passed it, like I would celebrate that. So definitely celebrate those wins. And celebrate your friends' wins as well. Like if they are telling you about like a really hard exam they're concerned about, and then 2 weeks later they tell you they passed it, celebrate it. Be like, oh my God, congrats, I'm so proud of you. Like you did it. You see, like be each other's support system, because once you find that community, like you really are like all you have on campus, and you really want to be there for people so that they can also be there for you. And I think that's really important. And really just be resilient, like bounce back. I know a lot of the times, there's many occasions and opportunities for us to like feel defeated, but just have it be a learning experience, have it be a growth experience, and just know that as a first generation college student, if you decide to have kids, that's an experience that you're going to have that's going to prevent your child from having that experience. Why? Because you're going to be able to say, hey, don't do that, because when I did that, this and this happened to me. Or you know what? I don't think that class is good for you, because I know you as my child and I took that class and absolutely not, right? Those are little things that you're going to carry with you. And honestly, I remember there was a lot of like, failures or like, little discouraging times that I went through in college that I really like was like, damn, like beating myself up about it. But now that I look back, I'm like, those were the unique experiences that made college memorable and like made them fun, if that makes sense. Because now that I look back and having graduated, like, I think for me, it's like, those are the things that I remember, right? You're not going to remember everything, of course, but like now that I look back, I'm like, oh, I remember that time that like, I did X, Y, Z, and like it was the end of the world back then, but like it led to this, right? So definitely take advantage of that. And last but not least, before we end, I just want to like give some tips for my current or future first gen folks going into college. Use office hours. Your poor professor is sitting in that Zoom class or in that office, I'm 100% sure, by themselves. Use office hours. They're so important. You can get support. And even if you just want to pop in and introduce yourself and be like, hi, my name's like Axel. I'm in your class, this Wednesday class at 10 a.m. Just wanted to pop in and say hi. Hopefully I get to see you more throughout the year, la, la, la. Because not only are you, taking advantage of that support, but it's an opportunity for you to have like sometimes even a one-on-one experience with your professor, and they can share knowledge, and you begin to build that relationship with them where if you're struggling, they know exactly how to help you, exactly the advice to give you. And in some cases, if you're like 1% off from being in a whole different like letter grade, they'll do that for you because they know that you valued your education, you showed up to office hours, you took time throughout the semester to build that up with them in office hours, which is like a great opportunity to do that. Don't try to show up to office hours 2 weeks before school ends because your professors are no newbies to the game. They know. But if you take that time throughout the semester, your professor is going to value that. I already said this, find your people. I think it's really important to have community. Don't be afraid to ask for help. A lot of the times your professors they can't answer all the questions, but what they sure can do is direct you in the right place. Like I remember going up to one of my math professors and being like, I need help. I'm going to your office hours, but I need extended help. And they were like, our department offers tutoring. Here's the link. Go get some. It's free. Just need to book an appointment. And I was like, what? I didn't know. Or, whatever it may be, like your professors know of opportunities and experiences on campus that can help you. Use the free resources on campus. Your library has tons of free resources. You can check books out. Every single book that is needed on campus, like required like for instruction, has to be in your library. FYI. There's also all the digital tools. You can watch documentaries, movies online through your library. So definitely find out what your perks are and use them. I know Cal State Fullerton had a page with like all student perks, and it would give you like everything, like every single website that we had access to, every single resource. Go to your campus's page and look for every single resource that you have. There's a lot of programs that you can use. I know when I was a student there, I had like the whole Adobe suite for free, even though I wasn't like studying anything that had to do with design or anything. In my personal life, I used it, and it's something that was free on campus. Use uni days with your school email, use the Netflix, the Apple Music, the Spotify perks, like take advantage of all those resources and just really like look for it on your campus's website because you can save a ton of money by that. And there's things that you might find out that you already use on there. So definitely use that. Network, network, network. Always make friends. When you're starting off a class and you're sitting there, turn to the person next to you while the professor comes in and just be like, hey, like, what's your major? What year are you in? Like, oh, where are you from? Like, I know the biggest question at Cal State Fullerton was, are you from LA or OC? Like, just kind of like lay the foundation. You don't have to get too crazy, but lay the foundation so that, throughout the year, as you're going through that course, you can start to get comfortable with each other. And then by the end of the year, you're going to have a whole new friend. And if you guys are taking the same classes for the same major, like that's how you make friends that you will have like over multiple classes. Because then as you're taking classes, you're going to be like, oh, that person was in my last class. And then you can make friends with them. I know I made a lot of friends like that. And just advice that I wish I was given my freshman year was like, be yourself, be authentic. You're there for a reason. You got accepted for a reason. You are taking up space for a reason. And don't ever be afraid to take up space. Don't ever be afraid to share your personal experience when you're sharing things in class, when the professor asks for participation. I know it's hard and I know it's scary, but take up that space because, if we don't take up that space, then, that's a big issue. So I know it's a lot of imposter syndrome and I know it's really hard, but just be you. And, be authentically you. Don't try to be someone else on campus because you see other people being that way. represent yourself the way that you were raised, the values you carry, move forward with that. It's really important. And yeah, studies show that people who take peer mentoring, who take advantage of all these resources, get higher GPAs, more credits, and, feel better at belonging on campus. So hopefully that was all like relatable to the people who have graduated college. Hopefully it's helpful and insightful for the people that are going into college or that are soon going to be applying to college. You belong, even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes. You belong. Take up that space. Shout out to every first generation listener that's listening. Excuse me. Shout out to everyone who's first gen, whether you're a first gen student or if you're a child of immigrants. Like, thank you for listening. Thank you for connecting with me. If this connected with you in some way and you want to share your story or talk more, hit us up on our DMs at Mijo Podcast on Instagram and at the Mijo Podcast on TikTok. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was such a fun episode to write for you guys. And I really hope that you guys go up, take space, graduate, get those degrees, and become educated first-generation college students and educated Latinos or whatever it is that you may be. That education goes 110%. So be you. Thank you, guys.